It was just the most horrific, obviously the most horrific time in my life.
20 lives ripped away in an instant.
I don't even want to say it's an accident, it was a tragedy. From then on, our lives had totally changed.
An out-of-control speeding limo reaching speeds of 118 miles an hour.
I thought, okay, there's no way 20 people can die in one car. I refuse to believe it.
The crash bringing the entire capital region to its knees.
I will never have closure. She was my only child.
Now, 5 years later, the families of those victims are sitting down in exclusive interviews, sharing beautiful details about their loved ones.
You can talk to me about it because talking about her keeps her alive.
How they are coping.
Even after 5 years, your mind isn't completely around the fact that your life is totally different than what it was 5 years ago.
And how the trial and the verdict in this case
guilty
has impacted their grief.
It made the anger come back because then it's like this could have been stopped.
Also the children of the victims and the love that surrounds them. Right now, a News Channel 13 special report, The Healing, the Schoharie Limo tragedy, 5 years later. Five years. 5 years since in this very spot, 20 lives were lost in an instant. 17 were close friends. They were sons, daughters, siblings, cousins, best friends, mothers and fathers. This tight-knit group brought so much joy to this community and beyond. As we reflect on 5 years since this tragic loss, we're learning more about these lives. You'll hear about them like you've never heard before in exclusive interviews. We start with the never-before-seen video of the group of friends that day inside that limo, smiling, laughing, and just having a great time. In this never-before-seen video, images of joy.
What is going on?
The 12-second clip taken inside the limo, the 17 friends with smiles on their faces, all in great spirits. The quick video shows the entire inside of the limo, the circle of friends. And the laughter, the sweet sound of happiness, quick images of every precious life, sunglasses on, sunlight beaming through the windows. This joy, this jubilation, this is what the families are holding on to 5 years later. Time stopped the moment they heard about the tragedy. Some describe hearing about the horrific news as a blur, and since then, life has never been the same. Michael Ukai's brother called parents Mary and Kyle Ashton in Maine.
He said to me, "Dad, can you go in another room for a minute and sit down?" And I'm like, "Okay, what's going on?"
And I'm sitting in the parlor going, "Okay, God, something's going on." So I come in, sit down right next to him. He said, "Something may have happened to one of the kids." Looked at him and I said, "Is it Michael?" Pretty much just like that. "Is it Michael?" And he said, "Yes." I stood straight up, headed back out. "No, no, 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 no."
Amanda Hall's sister, Karina, was the first to sense something was wrong.
And she said, I texted her and she hasn't texted back, and I saw in the news that there was a limo accident. And that's when I started calling Albany Med and the police, and then we had to knock on the door.
They came here?
Yeah.
That was on Sunday. Saturday it happened, and on Sunday they finally figured out who she is.
Subrina, the whole thing it's quite the story for our end.
They didn't put the TV on at all that night, had no word of a crash. The next morning, a friend calls Savannah Bressi's stepmom, asking if she heard about a terrible accident. Stepmom Jerry reaches out to the mom of Savannah's boyfriend.
I said, "I heard the craziest rumor." I said, "You know, is it possible that our kids could have been in some kind of accident?" I didn't know anything about this accident, really. She writes back, "Call me." And when she wrote that back, that's when all hell broke loose.
And then I'm like, I have to call her mother, Kim.
Savannah's mom, Kim, was hours away in an area with poor cell service, but this call came through.
And all of a sudden the phone rang, and I was like, oh my God, it's Sam. And he said, where are you? And I told him, and he says, I think you need to come home. And I go, why?
A friend who's a state trooper calls Kim.
And he goes, I have 2 men headed down there to identify her. And, yeah.
4-year-old Archer and 16-month-old Elle were apple picking with grandparents Beth and Joe. Beth texted pictures to the girls' parents, Abby and Adam Jackson.
I was sending them pictures of all the cute pictures, and I didn't hear back, and I was like, this is odd. It's really odd.
Later that evening, Beth heard news of a terrible crash.
And I said, it's them. I know it's them.
Something in your gut just told you.
Yeah, you just know. You just know, because never did Adam or Abby get back to me on anything. You know, we texted all day long.
Especially for the kids.
Yeah. Abby's mom called and said, come to the house, the kids are dead. That's how I found out.
4 sisters, Abby, Mary, Allie, and Amy, were on that trip to celebrate Amy's 30th birthday.
We couldn't get any communications. You know, texting and phones.
Then as the day went on, we still weren't getting any communication. I texted and called everybody's cell phone numerous times.
Then, of course, something came over the news. Somebody said, oh, there was a big accident, blah, blah, blah. And it was, you know, you just kept your fingers crossed. It wasn't going to be what it is, but it was what it was.
Yeah.
It was a disaster.
6 o'clock, they got the call.
This is like when the Sullivan brothers were killed in World War II. There was 4 of them on the ship at that time.
Shane McGowan had plans to have dinner with Mom, Sheila.
Kind of waited for him all evening to call me. My last text to him around, I don't know, maybe 7 o'clock or so was, what's the plan, Shane? Not knowing that they were literally killed within an hour of me dropping them off. Aaron's friend Melissa, who called to say, you know, there was a terrible accident in Schoharie, and I was like, well, they wouldn't be in Schoharie, and she was telling me it was about a limo, and it was a bridal party, and I'm like, well, it's not them. I called the troopers, and then, you know, very shortly after, they were at the door. So, yeah, that's how I found out. You know, from then on, our lives had totally changed.
The doorbell rang after 9 o'clock or whatever the case might be. I said, who's ringing our doorbell at 9 o'clock? That's ridiculous. So I had a thing by the door where I could look and see who's ringing, and all I could see is like 2 people walking away. And Sue said one of them is a state trooper, and they said there was an accident. We didn't know anything about an accident at that point. And they asked us if we could identify. And they had his license. And I don't remember what happened after that. It was somewhat of a blur.
Patrick Cushing's brother Justin got the call from stepmom Sue.
And that's how I was notified. And it was, we're having trouble reaching your mother. So then it became, I need to let her know.
You had to make that call.
Yeah.
Take your time.
Parents and siblings lost loved ones in this tragedy, but 3 young children lost their parents, a young boy and his cousin sisters. Those children are now in the loving care of their grandparents.
There's a place there!
You excited?
What is it?
Little Archer, 4 years old here, filled with joy at the sight of her brand new playset.
What's a playset for? Me. For you?
She only got to use this playset one time with her mom before the tragic crash took her parents, Abby and Adam. This video, however, shows moments of happiness not too long after the tragedy, as workers with the city of Amsterdam volunteered to move the playset from Archer's old home to her new home with her grandparents, Beth and Joe, lovingly called Nona and Papa Joe by Archer and her little sister Elle. For 5 years, Beth and Joe have raised the girls, providing a home overflowing with love and providing support as the girls continue to process the loss of their parents.
But she said, so how did Mommy and Daddy die? How did Mommy and Daddy die? And I said, well, you know that they were in a crash.
Younger sister Elle was just 16 months old when the crash happened. Archer was 4. For a while, she could not understand why she wasn't going home. After consulting with professionals, Beth and Joe finally decided to let her see her old house.
And she went in and ran over. She ran in, she was like looking for them all over the house. She went over to Adam's chair and she said, oh, I smell my daddy. And then she couldn't find him. You know, she ran upstairs, she ran into all the rooms, and then finally I think she realized they're not here. So she needed to know for herself that it wasn't us. So
seeing it through a kid's eyes, it's like, it's just so heartbreaking. Yeah.
The girls have pillows with pictures of their parents. They hug them before starting big days, like the first day of school. They also have their own teddy bears with their family pictures. And Beth and Joe carried on with a family trip to Disney World planned months before the crash. As Beth quickly stepped into the role of mother in addition to Nona, she too is still dealing with the grief of losing her son and daughter-in-law.
For you to go through and cope with the immense loss of your son and Abby, your daughter-in-law, but then to have the girls, is it comforting in addition to, you know,
mostly, but there are times that we were never really able to grieve, because in the beginning we knew we couldn't be upset with the girls. It's interesting you ask that, because most people are like, oh, you're so lucky you have the girls.
Yeah, we do that a lot.
We're blessed that we have them, but we never really were able to.
You can't just grieve openly and have a bad day because you're pulling it together for them.
What do you want to say to all those men who did this for you? I can't hear you.
Up next, honoring the lives lost through the eyes and words of their loved ones and what they hold on to 5 years later. 17 friends went on that trip that day. They were artists, teachers, photographers, engineers, gardeners, outreach workers, and Marines. They were Star Wars lovers, Yankees lovers, sports stars. They were mothers, fathers, sisters, and brothers.
They were very similar and they were very different. They were very close friends. Abby was she was a little bookworm. She was from probably 5 or 6 years old. She was going to be a teacher. She was the most athletic of all the girls. She was also physically the largest.
Allison, you called her Allie, right?
Allie, yeah. She was big into gardening. She was probably the biggest follower of her father's gardening.
Amy was the traveler, right, out of the group?
Yes.
And was that in her even when she was little? She just was kind of on the go a lot?
Yeah, it was. So I think it was because of the soccer, because she traveled a lot with soccer.
Sounds like the sports were a big part of your lives, right?
Your lives.
Oh, yeah.
Took up the weekends and...
Oh, yeah, constant.
Yes. There were nights we didn't eat supper till 10 o'clock.
Parents Linda and Tom King remember fondly the constant stream of friends visiting, staying for dinner. The King's home was a place of comfort with a meal always prepared for anyone who stopped by.
Never failed 5 o'clock. Every night, 5 o'clock, the phone rang. It was Amy. What's for supper, Mom?
The feeling in the house, what was it like? Do you remember?
It was always busy.
Yeah.
comforting.
There's always somebody here visiting, somebody looking for something to eat.
You never
piles
knew.
of uniforms out in the washroom.
You never knew who was here for dinner. Like, the dinner was a main thing here that I always remember growing up.
Longtime childhood friend to the girls, Jamie Ott, remembers those times.
What was your favorite eating here?
I would say the corned beef and cabbage. Yeah. That's kind of how I got into it, really.
Linda and Tom got to see their 4 girls before the crash. Allie stopped by the night before, and the other 3 girls stopped by and had lunch before the trip.
It was about 12 o'clock they left. And everybody was all bubbly, you're gonna have a good time, happy.
Tom, you said it's been 5 years. How are you doing?
You miss them. You miss the things and holidays, and you miss them on their birthdays. You miss them, you know, the everyday goings-ons, like coming and getting supper foods and stuff like that. Linda's had to deal with all the paperwork, all that stuff. It's been continuous for 5 years. We had to deal with college loans. We had to deal with insurance companies. We had to deal with all kinds of things.
3 houses, 6 cars.
So it was
$1,000 of student loans.
So in a way, we didn't have much time. We had to deal with all the other things.
The logistics.
Yeah.
Instead of having the time to just grieve.
I grow just about everything. This is where tomatoes were, but they're pretty gone. I bury myself in my gardening. I start in January in the cellar growing stuff, and I don't quit until we plant the garlic in October.
What do you got over here? What's this?
There's peppers. Oh, wow. There's always something to remind us of somebody during the course of a day and a week or months. They'll never forget them. They'll never, you know.
Because we talk about them a lot too, so.
I'm sure reminiscing on some stories.
Oh yeah, all the time.
Abby became a teacher and married her soulmate, Adam Jackson. They had 2 precious girls, Archer and Elle. Mary became an engineer and married Robert Dyson. They had a sweet son, Isaac. Amy was earning her master's in nursing home administration. She married Axel Steenberg just months before the crash. All 3 husbands also died in the tragedy. Allie King became an avid gardener and raised chickens with her fiance, Brian.
I don't think anybody gets over this kind of thing. Just don't. And I pray to God it never happens to anyone else.
Adam Jackson's compassion shone at a young age, always trying to put a smile on Mom Beth's face after a hard day. He was unapologetically himself. He would wear shorts in the winter. He lived in his favorite sweatshirt. He was possibly the biggest Star Wars fan, a major Yankees lover, and a huge movie buff. He was a prankster, spreading butter on driveways. That's what he did to his future wife, Abby, a way of flirting with her when they started dating. They were soulmates. 5 years later, Adam's friends are still in awe of how loyal, dedicated, and truthful he was. He had the ability to make everyone feel like they belonged. And he was an inspiration, not only as a friend, but as a young father. He was one of the first of his friends to have children. Adam and Abby carried on with hosting Sunday football hangouts, Adam often happily holding sweet Archer and baby Elle so his wife Abby could host. His girls were his world.
Just close your eyes, try to picture their face.
We were very close, yeah. And as she got older, you know, she was not only my daughter, she was my best friend.
Savannah Bressi would see Mom Kim nearly every day. She was very patriotic and proud both her parents served overseas.
The 3rd child, you know, it's like, oh, go ahead, do whatever you want. You know
Survival
what I mean? It's all good. They're tough as nails.
Stepmom Jerry had been in Savannah's life since she was just 4 years old.
Jerry, you were like her second mom,
Yes,
right? So
definitely.
Savannah was athletic, into volleyball, track, and basketball. She studied political science, and she wanted to go to law school.
Very determined, huh?
Oh,
yeah, she
yes.
was very.
That is a nice word for it.
When she made her mind to do something, she was going to do it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
She met boyfriend Matthew Coons at the gym. He was also in the limo that day. When news of the horrific crash spread to all those who love Savannah, Sam, Jerry, and Kim rushed to Albany Med.
Savannah had a sleeve tattoo, I guess you would call it that. That's how she was identified. That's how bad it was. As a parent, you just have hope. And I thought, okay, there's no way 20 people can die in one car. I refused to believe it.
Poor Kim fell apart. We thought she was having a heart attack. It was just the worst scene you can imagine.
It was awful.
And they had to take her into the ER because she couldn't breathe. Oh my God, it was a mess.
I kept saying it can't be true, and then my oldest daughter said to me, "She's gone."
The funeral home prepared Savannah's body in a way so her family could touch her to say goodbye.
Cut a sheet in that covered her head and put some of her hair out, and we got a black of her hair.
And as a nurse, when I touched her, because I had to know that she died instantly.
Right.
And I knew, and when I touched her, that she did. But I couldn't get closure without seeing her, knowing she died instantly, and giving her a kiss goodbye.
She loved people. She was shy if she didn't know you, but around family, she was bubbly. Always had a smile on her face.
Yeah. And she was your only child,
yes.
So center, right, of attention for
Yes.
sure. And did she eat that up a little bit?
Oh yeah, she was a ham.
Diligent student?
Yes and no. She was the joke of the family. If somebody missed the bus, they'd go home. If it was Amanda, she'd walk to school.
Dedicated then.
Amanda Rose Renberg, lovingly called Rosie by her mother Donna. Amanda's grandparents were heavily involved in her life. Her grandfather was so well known at her nursery school, even he got a diploma there.
He had to walk across the stage just like Amanda did. He got the thing around his neck. It was cute. It was tearful, but it was very cute.
What was your relationship like with her as she got older?
I don't know if I want to say that. She was me. She was me. So we clashed a lot. She had a smart mouth like I have and did, but she was polite, she was courteous, and she was very respectful of people.
Amanda went to Colony High and then to SUNY Plattsburgh, and that's where she became friends with Amy Steenberg and the other King sisters. Amanda started working with Living Resources, which supports people living with disabilities, and she excelled there.
Her time at Living Resources, my goodness, did people have amazing things to say about her.
She loved her job.
And her job there was to help people, right?
Yes. She had a voice for those who didn't.
And as her mom, watching her kind of from the sidelines excelling and succeeding, that must have made you so proud during those years.
She left quite an impression. She had a bright smile that anyone would kill for. And she made an impact on a lot of lives, young and old.
Amanda was Donna's only child. She aches still at the thought of never hearing the word grandma.
She was my life. She was all I had.
She was life.
Amanda Halls was born an artist.
First time she was holding a crayon, she started.
She loved to draw. She loved to bring out the best in everything. Sometimes she drew a lot of just her emotions.
Her parents, Martina and Ed, still spend time in what was Amanda's bedroom, looking at the wall of art.
The things she drew, I can refer back to as like, yeah, I remember that time.
Takes you back to that moment or to that time period.
Amanda was very close with her younger sister, Karina. Martina remembers vividly the last outing she had with her 2 girls.
I was so proud seeing them and saying to myself, those are my 2 girls. The girls went in and got us some ice cream. It was just a wonderful day. And it stays in my memory forever.
Amanda quickly became caretaker for her mom. Martina had an accident in 2011 and has been wheelchair-bound since.
You know, she was the rock of the kids. If Karina had a problem, she would deal with it. If Kevin had a problem, she would deal with it. And kind of just all come together. And me too, I'm not perfect. She would yell at me too.
Amanda was excited to move to downtown Troy with boyfriend Patrick Cushing. He was also in the limo that day. Amanda loved gardening. Her apartment in Troy was filled with plants, and some of those plants are still thriving on Ed and Martina's back deck.
I talk to her all the time. You know, it's just the way I am. We put some, what do you call those things outside? Those wind chimes?
Oh, yeah.
And when I walk by, they ring. I say, hi, Manny.
Let's say there's a song I hear, and that just gets me.
Yeah.
I think of her every day, the moment I wake up and when I go to bed.
Patrick Cushing always looked up to big brother Justin, even loved the music and the bands he liked.
I mean, actually what I'm wearing right now, it's an AFI, is probably one of the biggest bands that really influenced us. Right after all this happened, they put out an EP called Missing Man, which is the shirt I'm wearing. I wasn't even thinking about that before, but it just, the imagery of that resonates because a month after the accident, that kind of, it hits you.
Patrick was full of energy from when he was little, always on the go, trying out every sport. He battled ear infections as a child, which impacted his hearing and speech.
He ended up speaking a little different than anyone else did, and it became so pat that it's something we all miss because it's a voice we'll never hear.
Dodgeball became one of Patrick's passions.
A coach tapped me on the shoulder and he said, "Are you Patrick's dad?" And I said, "I am." And he said, "Do you know how good your son is?" And I said, "Well, I'm sure he's pretty good because I know he's pretty athletic." And he goes, "He might be the best, one of the best dodgeball players in the world, and he's certainly the best dodgeball player I've ever seen."
Wow. The one common theme I've heard in a lot of these conversations is how likable Patrick was. He just naturally, people gravitated towards him.
His world was much, much bigger than a lot of children or a lot of adults. And thank God for that.
Kevin remembers meeting Patrick's girlfriend, Amanda Halls.
She came to the house for the first time. I said, "Well, this is different."
One of the last conversations Kevin remembers having with his son was about furniture for his new apartment with Amanda. The group in the limo the day of the crash wasn't just Patrick's friends, they were Justin's friends and family too, their cousin Aaron. And Justin went to prom with Abby Jackson in high school, and he was Adam Jackson's best man in his wedding.
A whole group of friends, relatives, people very dear to us, Patrick, Amanda. It was, I mean, the depths of our pain and sorrow and helplessness were just totally helpless. It was terrible.
The amount of loss it's unimaginable.
It's overwhelming. I mean, it still is when you think about it. There's 10 people you were close with that are no longer here. So you really lose some of that floor that you think will always be there. They're those things that sort of ground you and make you look forward to things that you'll do in the future. So when you lose that grounding, it is like pulling a carpet out. So it really changes your reality.
Up next, we go across state lines to Maine and Florida as we continue to honor the lives lost in the Schoharie Limo tragedy.
We're in the airport right now at Albany International Airport, getting ready to board our flight to fly to Florida and speak with Sheila McGarvey. She's the mom of Shane McGowan. He also passed away in the limo crash. We're flying over there to sit down and speak with her about Shane. Do you find yourself talking to him from time to time?
I do. I call out his name a lot.
As a child, Shane McGowan always had a ball in his hand.
He was a gifted athlete. And
from a young age,
From a young age, yes. He was very energetic, always looking for the next thing, like, what are we doing next? Explain to him we're going to go to the pool, we're going to go here, we're going to go there, and then what are we going to do?
He played baseball and soccer. His favorite sport ended up being golf. He was protective of little brother Colin.
As they got older, they went out together and they partied a little bit together. And I'm sure a lot of people could tell stories about them.
Throughout college, Shane worked with people with developmental disabilities at Liberty ARC in Amsterdam. Shane was the first grandchild in a large Irish Catholic family with 7 uncles.
He would imitate my parents' Irish brogue.
As an adult, Shane would call Mom Sheila nearly every day, and they would talk about work and finding your own happiness and joy. And he found that joy in Erin Vertucci. The couple married in June 2018, 3 months before the crash.
When she was coming down the aisle, I just saw those tears in his eyes.
Shortly before the crash, Shane and Erin pre-qualified for a loan to buy a house. They wanted to start a family. Sheila gave the couple a ride the day of the limo trip, and she remembers Erin was glowing. She remembers her son opening the door for his new wife. She also remembers not smelling cigarette smoke on her son, and she felt so proud in that moment. After the crash, Sheila wanted to see her son.
I demanded to see them, and the gentleman from the funeral home basically said, "You're probably not going to want to see him." They had Shane and Erin in a makeshift coffin with, hospital gowns on, and his head was wrapped. So I knew his skull was fractured. You feel his chest. You knew that there was an autopsy done. You feel the bubble wrap or whatever it is that they put there. So.
Did it help to see him in that moment? Yeah.
It did help. It gave me closure just to see him one last time. I often think of more of him as a little boy.
That's the image you keep in your mind?
Yeah, and when I see a child at the beach, I think of him. When I see a grown man with a child, I think of him. That could have been him with his child. Every day, I, cry a lot. Just ask sometimes for God to help me get through the day.
She was quite spoiled because I was a single mother with her for the first 5 years of her life.
Erin Vertucci, before she became Erin McGowan, she was very close with her grandparents. Lynn Sempervivo remembers her daughter as a social butterfly surrounded by friends.
I used to hang up on me a lot, and I would never call her back. She would always be the one to call me back. So I was glad that we had got beyond that before this happened. We really were starting to connect and become more like friends.
She remembers meeting Aaron's new husband, Shane.
When they were about to get engaged, he said to my mom, how did I get so lucky? And I'll never forget that he said that. That was the most wonderful thing I ever heard, you know.
That's beautiful.
He thought she was everything.
Erin was working on finishing her degree, and she wanted to start a family.
And they were trying. That was difficult, cleaning out of her apartment and seeing, you know, all the, you know, pregnancy tests and prenatal vitamins. I mean, she was preparing herself for it. So she had a lot of goals. She had things she wanted to do, and she was, you know, she knew where she wanted her life to go.
Lynn was on a trip the day of the crash.
Yeah, I talked to her as I was driving through the Poconos, and that was the last time I talked to her.
Do you remember some of the last things that you were able to say to Erin?
No, but we always ended with, I love you, so at least I know that was said. This 5 years has been a blur for me. It's been very difficult. I'm surviving it, but and very difficult. I'm just surviving it, I'm living with it, and every day I cry over it. I haven't looked at her wedding pictures, I haven't looked at her wedding videos since she got married. I can't do it, can't throw her stuff away. I still have boxes of clothes.
This shining light has helped Lynn, her granddaughter. She's Erin's niece, and she was born on Erin's birthday. Her name is Evie, for Erin's initials, Erin Bertucci.
I want to put her name out there. I don't want her to be forgotten, so that's why I'm here today.
You would refer to Matthew as the gentle giant. It almost seemed like his personality didn't necessarily fit his physique, right? And
Right.
they were like opposites.
Exactly. He was such a kind soul.
Matthew Coons had a hug like no other.
And the way he said, Mom, it's just so personal and so touching and warm, and I love it, and I miss that so much. People say if I could talk to my child one more time, if I could hug Matthew and see his smile one more time. And he always had a couple really good friends, and he had those friends until the day he was gone.
And they still, I know, talk about him to this day, right? Think fondly
do.
of him, yeah.
They call and they check on me, and they are great, amazing friends. When he was in the Army, of course, they really were into the physical fitness, and he really started taking that serious. And then he left the Army, and that's, I think, when he started with Axel and Richie, when they started getting into the gym together a lot.
Yeah.
And Matthew...
I think they met at the gym, is where they met, I believe. Axel was sweet. He was just a little doll, always smiling. He could make anybody smile. If he thought you were sad, he could have you smiling within 5 minutes. Richie would have you busting a gut within a couple of minutes. Richie was my wise ass. He always had, no matter what it was, he always had something smart to say.
The Steenberg brothers were best friends, constantly pulling pranks on Mom Janet.
Richie used to like to pick me up, move me around the house.
Like physically pick you up?
Oh yeah, I'd be doing dishes, he'd pick me up, and put me out front, lock the door.
Obviously they loved you.
Oh yeah, they did. They liked calling me old and embarrassing me in front of their friends.
And one last prank. Janet picked up a pack of cigarettes son Richie bought for her the day before the crash. She didn't open it until after the tragedy, and she found just one cigarette inside.
Do you remember laughing in that moment?
Yeah,
Did it just
I
provide
do.
a moment?
Yeah, it was just like, I was like, oh, you little snot. I can't believe you got me again. You got me again, one last time.
Janet is now helping to raise Richie's daughter, and Jill takes care of Matthew's dog, Bane. Both heavily rely on each other for comfort on the tough days and laughter on the happy ones.
Where our kids were connected, and we really were, but we weren't. We were, but we didn't know we were.
Right.
Until this.
As time goes by, I'm afraid that it'll get so far away that I forget. I don't ever want to forget. And that putting them on the shelf thought sometimes does come into my mind, and I don't ever want to be there.
Yeah, no,
and
me either.
and there's.
I'm afraid I'm going to forget the sound of their voice.
Yes.
Or their laugh, or just something so simple.
I have nothing with Matthew's voice, and it breaks my heart.
If you had to sum him up in one word, I would say kind-hearted.
Oh, there you go.
Michael Uchiha was adventurous, he had quiet strength, and he was very close to his brother Jeremy. Dad Kyle remembers the first time he took Michael hunting and the fear Michael had in his face when he dropped the shotgun, leaving a mark on it.
He said, "Dad, I'm so sorry," and he handed it back to me, and I said, "Oh, are you kidding me? Don't worry about it, it's just a shotgun." Every time I see that little burr on there will remind me of the time when we went shooting together for the first time. That was probably one of my best memories with Michael.
They went camping together, one time getting stuck without enough water.
The next day when we finally got back out to the car, we were both totally dehydrated, in desperate need of food, so we went to Burger King and sucked their soda fountain dry and had some lunch there, but that was a really good time.
Michael was a Marine. He served in combat in Iraq.
He had wicked PTSD from things he experienced over in Iraq.
Did he share any of that with you?
He didn't really talk about it.
It took years for Michael to recover both emotionally and physically from his time overseas. He was just starting to put his life back together. The birthday party limo trip was part of that. It was Michael getting out and socializing again. It also happened to fall on his birthday.
I know I say this a lot, but he went through all of that to come back home to go to a birthday party, and that killed him.
On his birthday.
On his birthday. On his birthday.
Images of that day haunt the parents 5 years later.
Every time I see that picture of that vehicle down in the ravine, I know my son is still in there, and I can't get that out of my head.
Your faith throughout all of this has been paramount.
Very, very. God has really been the one to get me through anyway.
Yeah, I tried to treat him like he was my biological son. Every time that I hung up the phone with him, I would say to him, "Michael, just remember that your dad loves you." And he'd always say, "I love you too, Dad." And, so that meant a lot to me because I know the last thing that I said to him was that I loved him.
The limousine that crashed here 5 years ago, coming through the intersection, the lengthy report and the criminal trial took years. Saturday, October 6th, 2018, a stretch limousine carrying 17 friends from Amsterdam to Cooperstown crashed into an SUV in the parking lot of the Apple Barrel Country Store in Schoharie. 20 people were killed. The driver, 17 passengers, and 2 pedestrians in the Apple Barrel parking lot. Authorities quickly zeroed in on the operator of the limo company, Nauman Hussein. In January of 2019, the governor proposed limo regulation reforms in the New York State budget. On April 5th, 2019, a Schoharie County grand jury handed up an indictment of Nauman Hussein, charging him with 20 counts of manslaughter and 20 counts of criminally negligent homicide. 1 month later, a state police report was revealed showing the cause of the crash to be catastrophic brake failure. Then, just days before the first anniversary of the tragedy, the NTSB issued its safety recommendations. It revealed none of the passengers was wearing seatbelts. Shortly after that, a former Mavis Discount Tire employee claimed the shop in Saratoga Springs falsified invoices and did not perform brake work it claimed to do on the limo. In the NTSB's final report, it found if Prestige Limo had properly maintained the brake system in the 2001 Ford Excursion stretch limo, it probably would have been able to safely stop at that intersection. More than 2 years after the deadly crash, new limo laws finally took effect. Vehicles that are converted into stretch limousines now need to have several safety measures, including a seatbelt for every passenger, as well as signs encouraging the use of those belts.
I am not going to abide.
Fast forward to August of last year, Judge Peter Lynch rejected a plea deal for Nauman Hussein that would have allowed him to avoid jail time.
Ladies and gentlemen.
He went to trial, and in May of this year...
Do you find the defendant guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Hussein was found guilty of 20 counts of manslaughter related to the crash. He was sentenced to 5 to 15 years in prison 2 weeks later. Up next, the impact of the trial. It took nearly 5 years to finally come to a conclusion. So 5 years with everything, with the trial and the legal end of things. Do you feel like you're finally now, that is for the most part buttoned up, are you finally now able to grieve in a different way?
Yes, to a point. With Hussein in jail, it has helped with settling the upheaval in my heart. At least I know he's being punished.
The trial just took a lot out of me. It made the anger come back, because then it's like this could have been stopped. So I have a lot of anger, a real lot of anger, and I don't sleep well. I take sleeping meds to help me sleep now. Just the normal stuff. I take anxiety pills now. I'm back on the meds, which I had gotten off until we went to the trial, and then I was back on them. Before, it was always something we had to concentrate on. We had the limo laws, then we had the trial. We had always had something to focus on. Right. Yeah, and now that everything has come over, I don't have nothing left to focus on. So now I find I just get aggravated with everything really, really quickly. Like, just I want to snap all the time. All the time I just want to snap. I got to leave this part behind. And I'm afraid I'm going to leave my kids behind and forget them by trying to move forward.
The trial, I thought I was ready for it. I was not. Not at all. It's been a struggle, but I'll get to that point again.
Everything for me has gotten better since the conviction of Nauman. For almost 5 years, 4 years and 7 months, not one person would stand up and claim any kind of responsibility.
All the, the anger and I had related to just the pure negligence on the part of so many. How did we get involved in such a mess of, missteps along the way?
I don't hate him. I don't hate anybody. I don't know what the answer is to that. I guess he's got to live with it. We're obviously living with it. And I think that might be punishment enough. I don't know.
Up next, the special things the families hold on to keep them close to their loved ones. Each family honors and remembers their loved ones in different ways. And for some, it's something they wear every day.
She's my yellow butterfly. Butterflies all over my house.
For Donna Rivenberg, yellow butterflies are her symbol. For daughter Amanda, she got a tattoo of one after the crash. Many of the parents wear their children's wedding bands. Sheila wears Shane's, Lynn wears Aaron's, and Janet wears Axel's. For Tom and Linda, their whole house is still full of pictures of their 4 girls, Abby, Mary, Amy, and Allie. Kevin and Justin Cushing live by this motto, what would Patrick do? And for the kids, Archer, Elle, and Isaac, it's about telling them how incredibly loving and amazing their parents were. Jill Richardson Perez wears earrings from the Apple Barrel store where the crash happened. She wears a ring with a lotus, the symbol from the Reflections Memorial. And she has her son's ashes in the pendant she wears around her neck. Martina has daughter Amanda's ashes in her necklace too.
When I lay down in bed and go to sleep, I'm holding it. So she's always with us. She's always there. She'll never be forgotten.
No.
Never.
Up next, some final thoughts from all of these families for all of us. For Amanda Hall's parents, it's thinking about their daughter's tattoo that said never give up. That was her motto, and that's how they try to live their lives. For Donna Rivenberg, it's using her voice to speak about her daughter as much as she can. Savannah Bressi's father, Sam, is still working to overcome that sinking feeling he gets every Saturday at 2 p.m., the day of the week and the time of the crash. For Kevin Cushing, Patrick's father, it's remembering to slow down. He revisited a hike he did with Patrick once, where Patrick kept stopping to take pictures. This time, Kevin said he tried to do that hike through Patrick's eyes. It took a lot longer, but it was more meaningful. In the words of Kyle Ashton, Michael Ukai's father, reach out and hug your children and your loved ones. Tell them you love them every day. I'm Subrina Dhammi. Thank you for watching.